This is Inside the Jungle, episode 199, recorded Wednesday, June 17th, 2015. Getting a taste of Minicamp. Video bandwidth is made possible by the support from our Patreon campaign. To help support Inside the Jungle today, log on to spnt.tv/Patreon, where there you can help support our podcast. A little bit goes a long way, and we thank you for your support. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are around the world. Hey, it's the Inside the Jungle podcast. It's Wednesday night, and it's the Wednesday night roundtable. I'm hanging out with the one and only Anthony Cosenza over on the left coast. AC, what's happening, man?
Not too much. Feels a little lonely in here without, our other two gentlemen that usually join us. But you and me get to snuggle up close and get intimate tonight, Nick.
That's right. It's going to be a good show. I'm looking forward to the next hour with my boy AC. Got a lot to get to this week. Obviously, mandatory mini camps kicked off. The taste of the NFL is going on right now as we speak at Paul Brown Stadium. That is where our very own Scott Bantel is on assignment tonight. He is snuggling up with Bengals players and coaches and all kinds of fun people down at Paul Brown Stadium. So hopefully we'll catch up with him. He may be calling us here in about 10 minutes. We will see. I also want to get into, we've been covering it on the website, cincyjungle.com, the top 10 breakout players. And so far we've announced players 10 through 7, which we'll do here. We'll talk about a little bit more here on the program as we get into that. And then if we have some more time, I want to talk about Leon Hall getting some reps at safety. It's like Paul Gunther was listening to Scott Bantel last week on the show, Anthony.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I mean, we were talking about it, and I think a lot of us kind of poo-pooed the idea a little bit, and Scott might have known what he was talking about for once.
For once, that's right. Good stuff. And, of course, if you want to get in touch with us, you can email us insidethejungle@spnt.tv. And as we usually do, and we normally do, we'll open up the phone lines a little bit later on in the program as well so we can hear your thoughts too. But before we do that, we have one more episode until episode 200, which will be next Wednesday. Now, for those of you who don't know, or maybe you do know this already, is for about, I would say for the last 11 months, I've been working third shift, which means we've had to move the start of the show, the live show, on Wednesday nights up an hour to 8 o'clock, which makes it rough on guys like AC because it's literally quitting time where he's at over on the West Coast. He hustles home, and I can't thank you enough for doing that. But I've got some great news regarding the show moving forward. Starting next Wednesday, episode 200, I am now going to be working first shift, which means we can start the show an hour later. We can start at 9 o'clock. It also means the crew and the cast and everybody can hang out a little longer after the show. I don't know if we'll bring the after party back, but we'll at least be able to hang out a little bit more and talk and hang out with everybody here in the chat room. And it's a good incentive for everybody to tune in live here at cincyjungle.com. So I'm really excited about moving back to first shift. Third shift is rough. It sucks having to have the show wrapped up by no later than 9:15. It also means that with more time at night, we can have more interviews, more guests, which we haven't been able to do over the last 11 months because we just didn't have the time. And if we want to have guests and we want to, each bring something to the table each week, plus add the phone calls, there's only an hour. And so now that I'm able to extend that a little bit, working first shift, I'm pretty pumped about that. And so, yeah, starting next week, the show will go back to its normal time at 9 o'clock Eastern. I know that makes your life a little easier, AC.
A little bit. But congratulations to you, because it sounds like you've been gunning for that for a little while. And, obviously it affects your day job and this gig as well. So kudos to you to get where you're wanting to go there. And like you said, hopefully we can ramp some things back up that we were doing before and kind of had to shave a little bit off because of that. But looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm just really excited. I think it's going to make the show better. The fact that we can communicate and hang out with more people afterwards and, get a sense of, what Bengals fans around the world are thinking, hang out in the chat room. I mean, that's the biggest thing for me, is to be able to hang out with folks every Wednesday night. I know it's virtually, but we're still hanging out, and it's good to develop that bond and get in touch with the community. I'm really looking forward to that. And speaking of next week, I've already got it booked, and I'm really excited about this. But Jeff Hobson from Bengals.com will be joining us for episode 200. So I know you're pumped about that too, AC.
Yeah, that's awesome. He always gives great, number one, great insight, but number two, he always is very generous with his time with this show and with Cincy Jungle in general. He's helped out some of the writers there. I think he gave Josh a guest writing spot on Bengals.com at one point too. So he's very kind to the website and to this show. I'm looking forward to that, and that's surprising news to me. I didn't know you had him locked in, but very few people would be better to get for episode 200 than Mr. Hobson.
Yeah, he's the man, and looking forward to getting back in touch with him and talking with him here on the podcast. I think we have Scott Bantel on the line. Scott, is that you?
That is me, yeah.
What's happening, man? How's life down at Paul Brown Stadium tonight? Scott's hanging out at the Taste of the NFL. Now, normally, this is Mickey's gig, but he's on vacation, and he passed the torch to our very own Scott Bantel. What's it like down there, man? You having fun?
Oh, I'm having a blast. I mean, it's a great event. Most of the guys are down here. Most of the players are down here. And, I think Mickey might be disappointed. I haven't been able to get many interviews, but I have gotten a lot of pictures for us. And, Nick, I got some surprises with some celebrity guests wishing us congrats for next week.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to hearing that. So, give us the lay of the land. I mean, what's it like? I mean, is it just a lot of players and coaches? Have you had a chance to get any pictures with any players?
Yeah. So there is, I would say probably about 1,000 or so people. Best restaurants in Cincinnati all have a booth set up here, so you get to try some excellent food, excellent drink as well. I've gotten to take a picture with a couple of guys. I got a picture of myself with Andy.
Nice.
I got a picture with one of my all-time Bengal favorites, David Fulcher.
Nice.
Fulcher's down here. Some of the alumni, TJ Hushmanzada's down here. I think he's doing a coaching internship with the Bengals right now, so he's down here. So it's nice seeing some of the old players here as well.
Very cool. What kind of food did you have tonight? I'm curious.
I tasted up Jeff Ruby's. I, in fact, went back to Jeff Ruby's for a second time and hit up Ruth Chris. I hit up Jags, which is another steak restaurant here locally. And I got some taste from Nada. I got some donuts from Holtman's. So, like I said, pretty much the best stuff around.
Scott, who was the most entertaining either picture you took with somebody or verbal exchange or anything like that? Who kind of was the highlight of the night, be it a player, coach, whoever?
Oh, hands down. So I got the chance to talk to Dave Lapham real quick, and he was with one of the best Bengals personnel guys ever. If you know JB, you watched the first Hard Knocks, he had a nice feature on there. He's their equipment guy. He's the guy that leads them out on the field every week.
Oh, okay.
So I got to have a nice exchange with Dave and JB, which was a good time.
Awesome. Very cool. So what's in store for the rest of the night? I know it's not over yet, right?
No, right now they're doing an auction. So Dave Lapham's actually one of the auctioneers up there. So
I bet that's interesting.
Oh yeah, they're auctioning off some pretty cool stuff. Unfortunately, mostly out of my price range and out of the Cincy Jungle budget. So I don't think I'm going to be taking anything home. But the rest of the night, I believe, is just an auction and then some drinks.
Awesome. Well, very cool, man. Well, I know you got a lot going on down there. Appreciate all you're doing for the site and for the show down there. Have some fun and have a couple beers for us, will you?
Yeah, no doubt. Can't wait to catch up with you guys next week, and can't wait to listen to the show tomorrow.
Oh, before you go, I got to ask, is Brandon Tate down there? You got to get a picture with Brandon Tate.
I'm not going to lie. I'm not sure I would recognize Brandon Tate unless he's wearing his number 19 jersey. But if he is down here, I may see if I can get him to sign my my dress shirt.
That's
Just
awesome.
You need him to have a fair catch inside the 10-yard line to recognize him, right?
Yes. Well,
That's awesome.
I am looking at the field. If there's a guy running out from 9 yards deep, I'll take him.
Fantastic. Scott Bantel live down at Paul Brown Stadium. Hey, Scott, appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week on the Big 200.
No problem. See you guys.
See you, buddy.
That's Scotty B
Right.
bringing in down up. That's awesome. I love that he got a chance to go down there and hit up the taste of the NFL. We got to get you back East Coast, man, so we can do that, all of us down there.
I know. I'm jealous. That kind of stuff isn't really around where I live. I mean, I'm sure the Chargers do it, which would be the closest team, but obviously I'm not really interested in that. So, but it sounds like a really high class event, getting those high end steakhouses and whatnot there, and it sounds like they have. I think Mickey mentioned last year they had like a whiskey tasting bar area, and it sounds like there's all kinds of that stuff going on this year too. So it's cool. It's this was a team that for a long time didn't embrace the community of Cincinnati, and I think they've done a very good job of that over the past half decade plus. Now I think the taste of the NFL is probably mandated by the league that they have to do that, but even still, it's good to see them kind of roll out the red carpet to some fans and throw a high quality event.
Not only that, but I mean, look, they've welcomed us 3 years in a row. That's pretty cool. I mean, we're just this small podcast, and now here we are going on our 5th year and almost 200 episodes, and they've been kind enough to open their doors to us and give us some access. I wish they would give us access during the regular season, but that's a whole nother topic for another day. But I mean, that's still pretty cool that they let us come down there and rub elbows with everybody else.
Right, and it seems like it comes directly from management or ownership. I mean, I think Mickey began coordinating this with Katie Blackburn directly once he started getting this going. So that's pretty cool, and it gives us some sense of legitimacy, right? So
yeah, well, yeah, of course.
Yeah,
I mean, it's huge, and I'm really looking forward to getting Scott back on the program next week and find out a little bit more about how the rest of the night went there at the Taste of the NFL. Well, they're celebrating in a way tonight because mandatory minicamps kind of kicked off. It always goes kind of hand in hand. Minicamp and Taste of the NFL, normally they kind of happen right around the same time. So this year kicked off, but we've already got some bad news coming out of camp, and I don't know if it's devastating news, but it's bad news. But Rex Burkhead today left training with his knee wrapped in ice. That can't be good for him.
Probably not.
But it's June.
Yeah, it's June. We don't know the extent of the injury. It seems that the team has been playing it very cautious with either bringing guys back from an injury that they have, or just holding them out, getting them the veteran rest, whatever. So it's probably precautionary. To be honest, I haven't really checked the news wire as of late Wednesday to really see exactly what was going on there. But even if it is a long-term injury, which I hope it is not for Rex Burkhead, obviously, the Bengals have 2 quality running backs in front of him on the roster. They've got a couple of guys on the that either were on the practice squad last year or undrafted guys in James Wilder, Terrell Watson this year. So, I mean, there's some fallback options there if Rex Burkhead is to miss some time, but you hate to see it from a guy who began to emerge late last season, especially as a receiver, a guy that could kind of run into the slot and make a couple of plays. I remember him late in the season. I think it was against the Saints. He made a couple of nice catches, and then obviously he was one of the leading receivers in the playoff game against the Colts. So you hate to see it. I like the guy's skill set, but we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, he's one of those guys where we're still kind of waiting to see what his role is. And I think he's going to have to be one of those special teamers. And it's going to be tough, honestly, to get past Cedric Pearman. I mean, you mentioned both those guys ahead of him in Hill and Bernard, but let's not forget, Pearman's no slouch running the football either. So he's got some tough sledding to just get past Pearman from a special team standpoint. Now you add in the injury. You just hope it's not something too serious that's going to keep him out for an extended period of time. But again, one of those guys the Bengals drafted and had a lot of hopes for that we haven't really seen kind of blossom or get that chance to hit the field for the Bengals. But of course, when he has hit the field, he has produced, so you can't deny that. That's for sure. So hopefully this injury isn't too serious and he's able to recover and get back out on the field here really soon. The other news out of minicamp today, a little skirmish, a little scuffle, guys getting a little heated. I kind of like that. It's June and everybody's getting a little angry.
Right, and that's some of the fire. And I think it was last week's show, we were talking about swagger and, getting this fire in the belly and, not being content where they're at. And though it was, a couple of backup rotational guys, I think it was Matthew O'Donnell, the gigantic tackle from, I think he came from the CFL or he's from Canada, I think. It was him and Wallace Gilberry, and they started going at it. It got broken up pretty early, but that's kind of normal for minicamp, training camp. But it's good to see guys that are out there early and already kind of chippy and hungry. I mean, obviously you don't want them hurting each other, taking cheap shots at each other or anything like that, but I don't mind it.
It seems like, and maybe I'm wrong, AC, but this seems like that's an area between these two position groups that you always see these things happen, just because of the nature of where they play and the kind of contact they've got to go through every day in camp. I mean, when the defensive line and the offensive line are going at it all the time, of course you're going to get little skirmishes like this.
Right, and those guys scratch, claw, punch, kick. They do everything to each other, even if they're on the same team and it's only practice. I mean, they still get after it. You still see some of that stuff occur with wide receivers and defensive backs. I don't know if you remember this, Nick, but the first go round in Hard Knocks, I think it was Chris Henry and Roy Williams. There was a big scuffle because I think Henry thought Roy Williams was hitting him too hard or grabbing him too much or whatever, and they started getting into it too. So you see it in the wide receiver and the secondary groups too, but almost always it always seems to happen up front.
The other news, I don't know if this is news, but it was interesting. I thought it was kind of funny that this was tweeted out today from Coley Harvey at ESPN.com, commenting on the deep ball of Andy Dalton connecting with Marvin Jones. Now, I feel like this is the token story we get every year about how great Andy Dalton's deep ball is looking and how accurate it is. And I just kind of laugh and chuckle when I saw it on Twitter today, and I retweeted it saying, "Here we go again." So, I mean, it's camp. I don't care. I mean, I care that he's connecting with Marvin Jones. I care that Marvin Jones is on the field catching footballs in the first place, but I guess I don't really care that Andy Dalton's throwing the deep ball well. I mean, we need to see it in a game.
Right. I mean, it's one thing to do it in practice, and the quarterback and Andy Dalton isn't taking hits as he's throwing the football or anything like that in practice. It's pretty hands off with the quarterbacks in practice. So, you got to see it in the game. It's always good to hear that stuff, but at some point you kind of take it with a grain of salt. I do think obviously having the full complement of offensive weapons back couldn't hurt the effectiveness of Andy Dalton's deep ball. And I think, even though AJ Green is known as kind of a deep threat as well, he does everything pretty well. Marvin Jones is that guy that can stretch the field a little bit for them. And, he's not a true speed demon, but he is one of the quicker guys they have in the wide receiver group. So seeing that he's back and that they've connected, it's been a couple of times now or in early practices that they've connected on deep ball. So seeing that is encouraging, even though it's still early. You got to see it in real game time.
Stay healthy, Marvin. That's all I ask. Please stay healthy. And you want to talk about Hard Knocks. The thing I remember most about that second time around is Marvin Lewis yelling at Marvin Jones, "Stay on your feet." And hopefully he's learned, and that is not happening still, because we need him big time out on the field. So that's the latest surrounding mandatory. I like throwing that word in there. Mandatory minicamp this week is, of course, if you want more information and all the practice updates, make sure you check out cincyjungle.com. I know I was talking with our very own Josh Kirkendall a little bit before we went live here on the podcast, and he was getting ready to write his recap. So I know they're doing a great job. Everybody's doing a great job at the site covering minicamp. So check it out, cincyjungle.com. Well, speaking of Cincy Jungle, AC, we have created or started a list of the top 10 breakout players here for 2015. I want to go through numbers 10 through 7, starting with number 10, Will Clark. You think he's poised to have a breakout year in 2015, huh?
Well, I'm going to pat myself on the back a little bit. This is kind of my brainchild. I started.
It had your fingerprints. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, exactly. I did this one. I started this series last year, and to be honest with you, I didn't have a great success rate on guys I predicted. I had a couple of guys in there like George Aloka and whatnot that I ended up panning out pretty well. But I had Margus Hunt, I had Tyler Eifert, I had Taylor Mays, and obviously those kind of blew up in my face a little bit. So we're doing the same thing. And for those who haven't been reading it, basically what we mean by breakout, it's, if you're talking about AJ Green having a breakout year, that shouldn't really count. I mean, he's right. He's already made, 4 Pro Bowls, and he's one of the best wide receivers in the game. So he's not going to be a breakout player. What we do towards the back end of the list, it's players who are either poised to really make an impact as a rotational player, and make some plays that way. And you open your eyes after they've maybe rode the pine their first year, 2 years, whatever the case may be. And as the list progresses, maybe you throw in some starters that have been kind of marginal starters at their respective position, and maybe they blossom into a pretty solid NFL player. So that's kind of where we take it and where we're going with this list. To your point, Nick, about number 10, Will Clark, I put him on that list because he's added a bunch of bulk and muscle, not just gaining weight in general, but he's hit the weight room really hard. He's been impressing in camp now that Margus Hunt has had a back injury and has been out of the lineup. And, he could be one of those guys that starts to click for him his second year. And he could be one of those guys that the Bengals like to kick inside as one of those big defensive linemen that can rush from the tackle spot on third downs or obvious passing downs. So do I think he's going to have a double-digit sack year and make the Pro Bowl? No, that's unrealistic. But could he be a rotational guy and be effective like Wallace Gilberry was his first couple of years in Cincinnati, where he's getting 3, 4, 5, 6 sacks in a season as a backup guy? Yeah, I could see that happening if he translates what we've seen early on in camp going forward. And if the Bengals are able to get that from a backup player after not having success rushing the quarterback last year, I think they'd take that.
No question about it. I mean, you think about potential third down lineups there on the D line. You've got Johnson, Dunlap, Atkins, and maybe a Will Clark there. You rotate in Gilberry. I mean, Brandon Thompson, he's not bad at rushing the quarterback and getting to the quarterback either. And by the way, there's a name we hardly even mentioned, but I know he's been great on third downs in the past, and that's Pat Sims. He's one of those guys we've always thought, if he could just, maybe keep it together mentally and not jump offside against the Saints. I just think now that they've got some more depth on that line, and by the way, we're not ruling Margus Hunt out of this, but again, we're liking what we're seeing out of Will Clark here early on in camp.
Right. And there's going to be a scrum all across the line. I mean, you've got Devin Still, a former second-round pick, who's really fighting for his roster life. And obviously we all know what's going on in his personal life, but he's kind of fighting for his career as well. He put on quite a bit of muscle, lost some weight, some fat weight, I guess, over the offseason as well. So, I mean, defensive tackle is going to be very competitive. Defensive end is going to be competitive. And then you have those kind of hybrid guys, like I think we talked about Marcus Hardison, the rookie, that they are calling him a defensive tackle, but he played defensive end in college as a giant defensive end and was effective still. So it's going to be interesting to see how the entire defensive line shakes out for the final cuts and everything.
They got to get back to having 8 or 9 guys rotating.
I agree.
Mean, last year it showed. Dunlap was exhausted. Gino was not the same. We watched Pecco continuously getting blown off the ball and, getting pushed onto his back. That's never good for your defensive tackle. So they got to get back to that rotation. I think they've done a good job addressing that here in the offseason, whether it be through free agency and through the draft. So kudos to the Bengals for that. Let's move on to number 9, shall we? And this is a guy who I'm not necessarily sold he makes the roster, but a lot of Bengals fans are excited about what potential he might bring to this team. And that's Mario Alford. And we're probably going to see him, if he does make this roster, he's probably going to be your kick and punt returner to start the year.
Yeah, I put him on there. That was kind of a roll of the dice for me. It's kind of a shoot for the moon. Either he does make the final roster and has a good impact for this team, especially as a special teamer in 2015, or he doesn't even make the roster because he's a 7th-round pick. But I think obviously they like Brandon Tate, but they've shown over the last year or so that they are willing to experiment with other returners, mostly Adam Jones, back there and give him more shots because he's been the big play guy. So I think they value that speed. I think they need a little more speed in the wide receiver group. If he can contribute as a wide receiver and show that he could be a deep threat there, that'll definitely help him. But I think if you remember back, we mentioned the 2009 Hard Knocks, Nick. I think if you remember back to those preseason performances that we saw out of guys like Quan Cosby and Tom Nelson, if you remember those names, and their return ability, that really helped them make the final roster as it came along over guys that you were kind of surprised that were let go. So if Alford can make some significant plays as a special teamer, especially as a returner in the preseason, show a little bit as a wide receiver as well, then I think he makes his team and rounds out that wide receiver corps.
TC from Dub V in the chat room says, y'all tripping. I can't believe I just said that on the podcast. Y'all tripping, thinking Alford is not going to make the look. I've gone on record clearly saying I think Brandon Tate starts day one. That's just my thinking. The fact that they signed him tells me a lot. I hope I'm wrong, but
change, Nick, change.
I know, right, right. I would love to see Mario Alford, and let's wait and see what he does in the preseason. I mean, who knows? Maybe this guy goes out. I'm not saying that he will. What if he goes out and fumbles a couple punts and struggles? Then at that point, he's behind the 8 ball, and he's a 7th rounder that he at that point becomes a little bit more expendable. So we'll see.
Right.
It's all about the preseason, baby. Number 8, a guy who we don't really know a whole lot about. He's a newcomer here to Cincinnati this year, and that's Denarius Moore. We've seen him in years past have some okay seasons out in Oakland, but he's another one of those receivers that is speedy and can stretch the field. The question is, can he catch the ball with consistency? And by the way, he's got a quarterback in Andy Dalton who, let's just say, isn't the most consistent either. But you have him at number 8, Denarius Moore. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think I look at how decimated the wide receiver core for the Bengals was last year and how they needed someone that could stretch the field, especially late in the year. A.J. Green's in and out of the lineup. Marvin Jones is gone. They lost Andrew Hawkins. They just needed some speed and some big playability from the wide receiver position. And I think Denarius Moore can bring that, even if he's a number 4 wide receiver on this depth chart, which I think is where he ends up falling. I think I was kind of surprised when I started researching him for this piece. As I looked at his stats, I mean, the guy with all the quarterback issues that the Raiders have had over the years, his first 2 seasons, he had 12 receiving touchdowns and combined. And I think some of that had to do with finally Carson Palmer coming in there and solidifying things a bit. But, I mean, even Carson Palmer he was in and out of the lineup a couple of games. They had Kyle Bowler start a couple of games. Jason Campbell started some games when he was a rookie. So, I mean, for him to kind of put up some numbers early on in his career kind of opened my eyes a little bit. And obviously his rookie year was 2012 when Hugh Jackson was the coach of the Raiders. So that's an obvious connection there. And that's kind of why I see him. Hugh likes his guys, and Denarius Moore could be a quote unquote Hugh guy. So I think he makes the team. He'll probably be buried on the depth chart a little bit, but you spread the formation out a little bit and you get him out on the field and see if, you can huck one up deep to him and see what happens. So if they could get a handful of touchdowns out of him, especially some big plays, I think that would be very, very nice, especially for Andy Dalton.
What are the chances that Moore kind of leapfrogs Mohamed Sanu there on the depth chart at number 3? Because right now, if you've got to look at the early depth chart at receiver, obviously AJ's number 1, Marvin Jones number 2, and at that point, it's kind of up in the air after that. Especially after the way Sanu kind of dropped off at the end of the year last year. Is there any chance Moore maybe surpasses him and becomes the number 3 guy on that depth chart?
I don't think so. I think the Bengals really like Sanu. This is personally speaking. I think the Bengals like Sanu, especially as that slot guy. And even though he's not the smaller, shiftier type of slot guy, he is a chain mover. He is a guy that he'll make he'll make a lot of catches. A lot of them will be contested, but he's a pretty decent, reliable guy across the middle as a number 3 guy. Where I think that more could have a big impact, unfortunately, is if Jones has another injury or another setback, because he's been prone to miss some time, and you have to start a guy like Moore opposite Green, and then you have Sanu still as your 3rd guy in the slot, and you're not relying so heavily on Sanu like you had to last year when he would either have a phenomenal game or disappear for stretches. So that would be the biggest leap I could see Moore taking, but I think he's more of a number 4 guy and kind of mixed in there, maybe do some things that Andrew Hawkins did when he was with this team.
So Denarius Moore there at number 8, a guy you think that might have a breakout year here in 2015. And last but not least here on this list, so far that's been released over at cincyjungle.com, it's the second-year center, Russell Bodine. Gets a lot of flack from what I could tell on social media for his play here in 2014. I actually thought, considering that he was a rookie starting from day one, I thought he had a pretty good year. And he helped anchor a line that had a pretty good year running the football as well once they inserted Jeremy Hill into the lineup. But he gets a lot of flack. And I don't know if it's all 100% necessarily warranted, but obviously he's still young and raw and can improve. But you've got him here at number 7.
Yeah, I just think, already as it is, the Bengals offensive line, if everybody comes back good and healthy, I mean, it's already an outstanding unit. And, Russell Bodine started all 17 games for the Bengals last year at center, and that's kind of been a little bit of a rarity over the past few years. I mean, they got some okay play from Kyle Cook, but he ended up getting injured later in his career, and then it kind of paved the way for Bodine to get here. So he played every single game, and there were some ups, there were some downs, and the Bengals rode with it. I do think he maybe is a little unfairly criticized because he is the weakest player on that line, but you're looking at that line, there's a lot of good players on that offensive line. So I think he kind of stands out a little bit just from the sake of being, I hate to use the term, but the worst player out of that outstanding unit. But you look at him, and like I said, he started every game, and the team was, I think, number 6 overall in rushing yards for the year in the NFL, and they gave up the 3rd least amount of sacks in the NFL as well. Some of that could be hiding limitations of their quarterback and maybe even their center, but he stepped into a difficult position to grasp as a rookie and did okay. And I think if he steps up his game, he doesn't need to be a Pro Bowler or anything like that. But if he steps up his game and ends up being a solid player, a solid starter, then I think this line really takes the next step. And I'd be excited about the possibilities there.
Yeah, it's year 2. I mean, it couldn't be any worse than Eric Guychek, right? I mean, you talk about struggling as a rookie. I'll take the year that Russell Bodine had here in 2014 over anything that Eric Guychek did in his career. I mean, is he a Rich Bram? No, but again, it's year 2, and we're going to see a lot of improvement, hopefully, from him this year here in 2015. And I think that's, you having him at 7 on this list is the perfect spot. I think you're going to see him improve here in 2015. So far, I agree with all 4 of these players on this list. I still don't think Mario Alford makes the team. We'll see. I think he's going to be a practice squad guy. But then again, I'm wearing my Brandon Tate pajamas right now.
Those must be styling pajamas, buddy.
You know it. You know it. Would love to hear your thoughts, Bengals fans. Again, if you want to check out that list, it's at cincyjungle.com. So far, we've announced players 7 through 10, and we'll continue to update on the web. Is that something that publishes daily, AC?
It's not going to be daily. I think we're going to be a little over inundated with minicamp news and all of that for a little bit. And once that slows down, we'll pick that back up. Probably it'll be completed in between the time that minicamp completes and training camp begins.
So again, check it out over at cincyjungle.com. AC's doing a great job with that series as well, as he always does. He's the man. Speaking of practice squad, Jeff Hunter in the chat room reminded me today, or just now, Ontario McCaleb. Remember him? He was that Project Speedy guy we always heard about coming out of Auburn. He was a running back. They switched him to cornerback, and now he's taking reps here at camp at wide receiver. What? What's going on?
Very typical Bengals, right? I mean, they try and plug the square peg in the round hole a little bit. You know, they've had a little bit of a track record of getting too cute with certain players, change their positions. You know, Jason Shirley was one, and I think Mike Brown suggested on Hard Knocks that one of the defensive ends, I think it was Chris Harrington, be a tight end or something like that. You know, it's okay for some of these guys because they're undrafted, and you know, you didn't use a high draft pick on some of these guys. But I mean, at some point, why not put them where they're naturally gifted in the position that they're used to and see if they can do some special things there. But for McCaleb's case, I think they're just trying to find any way to use that incredible speed that he has. I find it hard to believe that he would make any kind of impact at wide receiver, just given the learning curve he has at the position. And I don't know. I think it's just more of, you know, he wasn't really getting it at cornerback. Wide receiver is obviously closer to the running back position that he played in college. So I think they're trying to see if something can work for him.
We'll see. Well, speaking of experimenting, we talked about it a little bit earlier in the program, but Leon Hall getting some reps at safety. And this is something that Scott mentioned last week on the show about maybe exploring to see if this is something that could help prolong Leon Hall's career here with the Bengals. We saw it a year ago. Still remember that game against Pittsburgh, Leon Hall getting torched by Martavius Bryant of the Steelers. I think he's still running. But again, moving him to safety, Leon Hall, one of the things about Hall that I always admired about him was his ability to stick his nose in there in the run game. And he was always a pretty solid tackler. You don't ever really, at least I don't remember ever really seeing him whiff badly on tackles out in space. And so maybe they're going to utilize his physicality in the run game there at safety. I don't know how much playing time he's going to actually get at safety. You know, he's still behind guys like Nelson and Loka there at both safety spots. So is this a good thing or bad thing for Leon Hall? Or is the writing on the wall at cornerback for him too?
I don't know. I think you got to let it play out a little bit further. I think for this year, he's probably going to be a cornerback. I don't see him really taking a lot of reps directly at safety. And you have to remember that George Aloka is hurt and not playing. So, you know, they're kind of experimenting and seeing, you know, what players could work at safety, and maybe Hall is one of them. So I look at it kind of a necessity type of thing because of Aloka's out, and see if Hall actually does have the skill set to do that. But I think instead of him phasing into a true safety, I think he'll be more of a slot type of player, kind of what Chris Crocker did towards the end of his career, kind of what they probably have in mind for Josh Shaw, a hybrid type of player, a hybrid safety corner that sticks his nose in there in the run game, but also covers slot receivers, whether it's a wide receiver or an athletic tight end. So I think Leon Hall's probably headed towards that area towards the end of his career. I think Josh Shaw is headed that way. So I don't know. I'm curious to see if it continues once Aloka's back, though.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I'll be interested to see if it continues if guys like Drake Kirkpatrick and Darqueze Dennard struggle in camp as well. I mean, they're still young, but, you know, Marvin loves his vets. He's never going to let those guys go. He's pretty loyal.
Right, and it's kind of funny because Drake Kirkpatrick is kind of a seasoned vet now, right? I mean, he's now entering his fourth season. So, I mean, at some point you got to totally see if he's worth the first round investment that they spent on him a few years back. And I think they're pretty content with what they're seeing out of Dennard as a second-year player from what I'm hearing. I think he's having a good showing, and he himself said he's ready to take that next step this season. So I'm a little more confident in what we'll see from him as a young player than Kirkpatrick. But I am encouraged by some of the things I've seen with Kirkpatrick early in his career as a big play type of guy. So, you know, if the Bengals have one guy on one side that's kind of the solid technician type of guy, and the other guy on the other side who's more of the gambler, big play guy, I wouldn't mind that. This team needs turnovers. It needs big plays from its defense, and if Kirkpatrick can do that, but he gets burnt here or there, you might want to live with that.
Well, we're talking mandatory minicamp. We're talking all things Bengals here on Inside the Jungle. We'll go ahead and open up that phone line if you want to get in touch with us. 404-946-3397 is that number to call. If you want to get in touch with me live here for another 15 to 20 minutes or so. So, Bengals fans, if you're watching us live here at cincyjungle.com, love to hear your thoughts about the squad. Josh Johnson, AC, getting more reps early on in camp than Terrell Pryor. Is this good or bad?
That's a tough question.
I bring all the tough questions tonight, AC.
Yeah, I know. You're hitting me hard with them. I think it's bad simply because it would be nice to see what you truly have out of Terrell Pryor, and if he can contribute in some way as a third quarterback or what have you on this roster. I think, again, they're going with the known commodity and Josh Johnson, giving him more reps. But, we're not in camp. We're not football coaches. Maybe they see just something that he is grasping the playbook, a familiar player, and he kind of knows the system than Terrell Pryor. So, you got to kind of quarterback is even a made on the final roster. And it sounds like their backup quarterback to Andy Dalton and A.J. McCarron is looking good. So, you have Andy Dalton that sounds like he's taken strides again this offseason. You have the backup McCarron that's looking pretty good. At some point, you kind of shrug and go, well, whatever happens to third quarterback happens,
Yeah, I mean, this is the classic. We need to fill space on the blogs and the newspaper articles for June. It's the class. I mean, face it, Terrell Pryor and Josh Johnson, they're not seeing the field this year, even if if they make the squad, let alone, they're just not going to see the field. I mean, let's be honest. So,
sorry to interrupt you, but I mean, I think it would just be clever of the Bengals to hang on to Terrell Pryor and see what they have out of him. And I mean, they know what Josh Johnson brings. You've seen a track record when he actually got time in actual games. It's not impressive. There's been times that Terrell Pryor has done some things as a pro quarterback, mostly with his legs, but he's won some games. He's put up some yards. I mean, I think if you're looking at a third quarterback and you're thinking true upside, I would think that, Pryor would be the guy to go over Johnson, but that's just me.
I mean, I was shocked that they brought Johnson back in the first place. After knowing what you had in him, I seem to recall, I believe it was a game against the Jets 2 seasons ago when the Bengals were absolutely thumping. I think that was the game Marvin Jones had, was that 4 or 5 touchdown catches? He had a huge game.
He was 4, yeah.
Yeah. And they brought in Josh Johnson in garbage time, and it was just like, did you forget how to play quarterback? Like, what? This is our backup? Like, if Andy Dalton goes down, holy crap, we're in some big trouble, kind of deal. So
right.
I'm shocked, and I'm kind of disappointed that they're not giving Terrell Pryor a little bit more of an opportunity to go out and do his thing. But obviously the coaches have their rhymes and reasons for what they do, and for whatever reason, you need 4 quarterbacks in camp at the moment. So we'll see. We'll see once training camp comes and once the preseason games start, how it all plays out. My guess is, based on how he will perform on the field, Terrell Pryor is going to be playing at this point, we're guessing with the 4s, right? So can you imagine Terrell Pryor going up against the 4s of like the Indianapolis Colts in the game? I mean, he's going to go out there and have a game,
Right.
Or should at least.
Yeah. And I really hope, I mean, aside from a couple of tune-up series and that dress rehearsal third game that you see from the starters in the preseason, I really hope that the Bengals use a lot of their backups often. And I know that doesn't make for great watchable football in the preseason, but you got to sort out some of these roster scrums. Quarterbacks one, we talked about defensive line earlier. You got to figure out which guys are going to fit best in either the defensive line rotation. If you're going to keep three quarterbacks, who's that third guy going to be? I really hope that they give these guys significant time. And sometimes these guys that are buried 3 or 4 spots deep at their position, they just don't get a chance to actually play and show what they can do, which is a shame.
Yeah, and to be fair, when you're watching preseason football, AC, it's kind of understood. Going into it, you're not going to see the best football, and you're going to see a bunch of names that you don't know or recognize. And I think we all kind of understand it, and we're okay with it. Now, when you're a bad team and you're doing this in the regular season, then that's where we have issues. Luckily, we don't have that problem here in Cincinnati anymore. One more thing before we get out of here. TJ Houshmandzadeh is a coaching intern with the Bengals. How cool is that? I'm glad to see Hoosh come back, and I think this is going to be big for guys like Sanu, guys like Marvin Jones. I don't know if this is necessarily going to be something good for AJ Green. Maybe it will be, because Hoosh was never really one of those guys that stretched the field. He was the big prototypical, I'm going to go across the middle, I'm going to do the 10-yard hook. I'm not stretching the field kind of player. I think that's where Sanu and Jones might be. They could take a look to him and maybe get some advice on where to play and how to play the position.
Absolutely. He's, personally speaking, he was one of my favorite Bengals in the recent era. He was just very fun to watch. And, he's one of those guys you love because he wasn't that fast. He was built pretty well, but he wasn't a huge monster guy. He was a 7th-round pick, and yet he was a big producer. And,
you know what he had?
He had heart. He
had swagger.
Yep, he did have swagger too. Yep. And not the Chad Johnson kind of swagger, just, a little bit different. And I think what his biggest asset was, he had great hands, but he was a great route runner. And I think that is where, granted, he's a kind of a temp coach at the moment, but if he is to have some sort of fingerprint on this wide receiver group, I think the nuances of route running, footwork, things like that, that's where he's really going to make an impact there. Like I said, he wasn't the fastest guy. He wasn't the absolute best wide receiver in the league, but he was very productive. He was great in this offense, and I think he also knew how to read defense as well. And I think that those are useful skills as a coach for a certain skill position that you're going to coach. So hopefully that kind of translates, and some of these young guys you mentioned kind of soak that in.
And you know what the common theme here is with Hoosh is the fact that he was always injured at the start of his career. I mean, that guy could not get on the field to save his life. And he turned it around and had a pretty productive career in Cincinnati. So I think maybe that's another thing that might rub off on somebody like Marvin Jones, and how to keep yourself healthy and on the field, because you're needed big time.
Right. And it's kind of funny. I think he was – well, I know he was drafted in 2001 with one of the better Bengals draft classes they've had in a really long time. But
might be one of their best ever.
Right. I think it was his first 2 seasons, like you said, Nick. He couldn't see the field, and I think part of it was his 7th-round draft stock, but he was also in the medical room, and he couldn't get healthy. And I don't think it's a big coincidence that once he started to get healthy, 03, 04, 05 is when that offense really started to take off. And they found that useful niche as a slot guy. They would split him out every once in a while, but you have Henry, you have Johnson, and you have Hoosh in the middle there, and that was one of his things. He could read his own defense, find the soft spot, and make a big play. So hopefully those are some of the things, like I said, that he can transfer over to this young wide receiver group.
Not to mention they had Reggie Kelly at tight end. By the way, they had Carson Palmer throwing him the football. That might have had a little bit to do with him having some success here in the NFL. As much as I hate to admit it, gosh, would it be nice to have a healthy Carson Palmer back? Oh, I can't believe I just said that. Did I really just say that here in episode 199?
We just took a weird turn. Wow, we just took a weird turn here.
Pretty cool to see Houshmandzadeh back with the Bengals and as a coaching intern. I don't know if he'll stick around, but good guy to have around the locker room and shed some wisdom to this young receiver group. All right, before we get out of here, we always got to do this.
Shout out.
Let's do it. AC, you kind of kicked around a new idea last week about your shout out. And I'm really excited about this because of two things. One, I'm going to be working first shift now, which means I'll be able to partake with you and do something along the lines like this. Why don't you tell everybody about it and what's your shout out for this week?
Well, those who listen to the show know, I either try and shout out a couple of fans, but sometimes I'll do a famous person and someone from the site and then one of our fans or whatever. I've decided, because a lot of us enjoy adult beverages while we produce this show, that if I'm drinking that evening, I'm going to shout out that particular beverage or that company that makes it. So tonight I am enjoying via Red Solo Cup, Coronado Islander IPA is the microbrew that I'm enjoying. And if you have the means, go pick that up. And I have one other shout out, P. Desmond Adams. He favorited the tweet talking about us going live on the show tonight. So those are my two shout outs.
Good shout out. I met Desmond at New Media Expo back in April. Cool dude, and got a chance to meet him in person. Good shout out. I like it. So yeah, now that I'm working first shift starting Monday, I'll be able to show off some of the brews that I drink. Now, I'm no hardcore alcohol drinker like yourself and Mickey, but I enjoy a cider or two. It might be the same cider each and every Wednesday, but maybe I'll have to try and change it up.
Nothing wrong with that.
But yeah, while we're doing the show, and if by the way, if you have suggestions for us on brews that you like and you want us to shout them out on the show, please, by all means, email us insidethejungle@spnt.tv. We'd be happy to try your recommendations. So that'll be a new segment, new shout out, beer of the week here on the program. We'll start that up in episode 200. Really looking, well, I guess we started it tonight, but we'll really do it up next week on episode 200. I don't have a shout out this week because we don't have any new patrons on Patreon. Come on, Inside the Jungle fans, help us out. spnt.tv/Patreon. All it takes is $1 a month. That'll get you a shout out here on the program. And by the way, that $1 a month goes a long way in helping us out with the show, getting new equipment, covering our costs as far as the file hosting and server space. And, if we ever want to do another live show in the future, it's not cheap. It's not something that can be done very easily. And your help is certainly appreciated. And we really need it. spnt.tv/Patreon is the address. And if you're a patron, you found out, I believe it was last week, about some new upgrades and new information about the podcast coming down the pike. Hopefully I'll be able to announce something cool about the show next week for episode 200. But if you log on to spnt.tv/Patreon and you become a patron, you'll find out all the inside information about Inside the Jungle. Big thanks to everybody who's gone out and contributed so far to the campaign. Really do appreciate all the support you've given the show over the last year and a half or so. Really do thank you for that. Usually we do at this point, we do, I guess I should remind everybody, we do record the show live every Wednesday night. As normally it has been at 8 o'clock, but next week, really excited. It starts at 9 o'clock Eastern. We're pushing it an hour back. That gives you plenty of time to get home, plenty of time to put the kids to bed, plenty of time for AC to get home from work, maybe have some dinner before the show. So just a reminder, and we'll do our best to remind everybody on social media throughout the week too, that episode 200 next week will be the start of our new time, 9 o'clock Eastern, right here at cincyjungle.com. And of course, if you do miss a live show, you can always find us on-demand audio on iTunes, Stitcher, anywhere you can find podcasts. Just do a search there, and you'll be able to find the program. Subscribe so you don't miss a single minute of Inside the Jungle. Final thoughts. And what did we learn this week, AC?
Well, I learned that Cincinnati, the city of Cincinnati, really likes its red meat, given the booths that are at the Taste of the NFL. I mean, you have Jeff Ruby's, you have Ruth's Chris, and I think Scott mentioned another steakhouse that was there. So that's what I learned. If I'm doing what you learned, Nick, you learn that there are other quality microbrews out there aside from ciders. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I will learn. It's going to take some time. Oh, by the way, I'm a little late on this, but I'm going to give a shout out to Frank Leonard. He's in the chat room. As much as I hate to say it, being an Ohioan, I'm not a fan of Cleveland whatsoever. Don't get me wrong. But I was rooting kind of hard for the Cavs. I thought it was a cool story of LeBron going home and getting them where they went in year one. I don't think anybody expected him to do that. But I know you've got your West Coast blinders on, AC. But I got to give a shout out to Frank Leonard. Big fan of the Golden State Warriors. Congrats to them winning the NBA title last night. First time since 1975. So kudos to Frank. I know he's pretty pumped today. Probably made going into work a lot easier now that they're champions. Good shout out. That's what I learned. I learned that Frank Leonard's a Golden State Warriors fan. Again, big thanks, AC. Appreciate you coming on the program tonight and rushing home. I know it's not easy, but I can't thank you enough for all you do for the show and the site.
Oh, thank you, man.
We missed Mickey this week. He was on vacation. I saw some pictures. He's out on the beach enjoying life. Hopefully he's staying away from all the shark attacks that we've been having here on the East Coast. That would not be good. And, of course, hopefully we'll catch back up with – I know we'll catch back up with Scott Bantel. Glad he could call in from the taste of the NFL at Paul Brown Stadium. Next week's the big 200. I cannot believe we've done 200 episodes. We've actually done more than 200 episodes if you count all the post-game shows and some of the specials that we've done. But as far as Wednesday night's program, the Wednesday night roundtable, this is the big 200. We really would appreciate if you tune in live right here at CincyJungle.com. We're going to have Jeff Hobson from Bengals.com joining us. And it sounds like we're going to have some pretty cool audio from tonight's Taste of the NFL next week. So make sure you join us. 9 o'clock. I can't stress that enough, and I can't wait. It's going to be great. Oh, I can't wait. The show's going to get so much better because we have more time and more flexibility. And I don't know if you can tell, but I'm pretty pumped about the switch and shifts. Not going to lie.
I can tell.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good. It's a good thing.
Absolutely. Before we get out of here, got to give a special shout out and thanks to our associate producers, Andy Lanham, Larry Rolson, Mike Vardy, and Fado Bayari. Inside the Jungle is an SPNT production. For more information about our other podcasts, make sure you log on to spnt.tv and check out our amazing Bengals content over at CincyJungle.com. For AC, I'm Subes. Hey, we'll see you next Wednesday at 9 o'clock Eastern at CincyJungle.com. Download the podcast, everybody. Hooday!